Brandon, before we get really into it, I kind of want to see if you can give me a mood check. So how would you describe the mood in the arena before game one versus the mood in the arena before game two?
You know what? Okay, so before game one, obviously so much excitement. And going into game one, being overwhelming favorites, the Thunder, there's just this general excitement. But you know what? I think it was that way before game two also. Like, the crowd was hyped from the very, very beginning. And I know there was, anxiousness being down 0-1. But as far as, the feeling I got from being in the arena, and, you can pick up on, nervous energy, and you can pick up on, obviously how loud it is and how into it fans are. I got to say, Thunder fans brought it both before game one and before game two. If anything, I would say that game two was even louder than game one throughout the game. So, I think the Thunder themselves came out with some urgency and a punch and more desperate. And maybe that carried over to the fans as well, because they were hyped from the very, very beginning.
And you're going to go attend game three and game four in Indianapolis. And I'm going to ask that when we record after game four, as we probably will, that you give an honest assessment of the crowd in Oklahoma City versus the crowd in Indianapolis.
I absolutely will. I'm looking forward to it because it's interesting. If this finals were in New York or Cleveland or somewhere else, Indiana kind of has a reputation of being the second loudest crowd in these playoffs. So I am curious to see how big a difference I can tell between OKC and Indiana, because I feel like I would have been able to tell a difference for sure with the Knicks and maybe another team that could have made it. But apparently, supposedly, the Pacers crowd is loud and crazy as well.
And they had a ton of people at Gainbridge Fieldhouse watching the game in their little watch party as well. It showed that on TV it was packed.
Yeah, which again reminds you of OKC with the whole Loud City Live. The road games are crazy. I think there's more people for these road Thunder games at the Paycom than a Hornets home game in the regular season, and the Pacers look like the same way. So credit obviously to Thunder fans, because they've been incredible all season long. And like Shea said last night in the postgame, he doesn't know how the Thunder fans do it, but they keep getting louder each game when you think they can't get any louder. But the Pacers fans have been bringing it as well.
Well, they did come up with the ratings, and game one is the least watched game one of the NBA Finals since 1988, or since it's been tracked, but who cares? These are great fan bases, and these fans deserve it.
Yeah, that's so funny. I don't care about the ratings. Obviously, I want more people to watch this team because I think this is a special team. I think that this is a likable team. It's a fun team to watch and to root for. You have the MVP. You have a couple of budding stars. Obviously, there's a million reasons to like both the Thunder and the Pacers and their comeback story and their underdog story in Indiana. So I think it's a great series. I think it's the two most deserving teams. And honestly, if people aren't watching, they're missing out on some great, great basketball. I'm hoping now that it's a 1-1 series. I think maybe some of it was everybody just assumed the Thunder were going to dominate. Maybe now that it's 1-1, people start watching more.
Welcome back to the Daily Thunder Podcast. I'm John Napier, publisher of Daily Thunder, and I'll be your host today. Alongside me is Daily Thunder beat writer Brandon Rahbar. Brandon, how are you today after Game 2?
I'm feeling much better after Game 2 than I was after Game 1, covering this team and just, the pulse of the fans and all that. So much more excitement here in OKC after getting this Game 2 win. Look, the Thunder were incredible, I think, over this 2-game series here in OKC at home. They just, lost Game 1 in the most heartbreaking way, but feeling much, much better after Game 2.
Yeah, and I want to kind of go back to my mental state before Game 1, and you look at the landscape of, media, predictions, general NBA fans and Thunder fans, there was a lot of confidence coming into the series that the Thunder were far and away the better team. I think there was a high expectation that the Thunder would not only win game one, but probably preserve home court. And that it was just a matter of whether the Thunder were going to win in 4 games, 5 games, or 6 games. Very few people thought this could be a 7-game series. And then the Thunder come out with that defensive intensity that they looked like they had in game 5 versus the Wolves. And they were forcing the Pacers to turn the ball over at an incredible rate. The Pacers had 19 first-half turnovers. The Thunder had a double-digit lead throughout the entire first half. I mean, do you think the mood among media in the building in that first half was like, yeah, this is what we expected the Thunder to do?
Yeah, I think so. I think that everybody thought that this was going to be what games 1 and 2 were like. And really, the Thunder led game 1 by 8 to 12 points, it seemed like, pretty much the entire game until those last couple minutes of game 1. And then the Pacers did what they'd done all postseason long and came back. But if you look at these 2 games as a whole, the Thunder have been leading, I think, for like 93 out of the 96 minutes, something crazy like that. Like, this has been a pretty dominating performance from the Thunder throughout 2 games, but it's only 1-1. So obviously, for Thunder fans, that's a big bummer because you feel like you should be up 2-0. But in game 2, they just did not let off the gas. They got up big, and they were still hustling for every single loose ball, for every rebound. They were flying everywhere. Even though they were up 20, they were beating the Pacers to every loose ball. And that's the Thunder team that we've watched all season long, all postseason long. They did not let off the gas. And I think that's more the team that we've been kind of accustomed to seeing.
Well, and to some degree, game 1 and even game 2, like, it kind of reminded me of the Nuggets series where the Thunder were really in control almost the entire series, the whole 7-game series with the Nuggets. But there were these small moments where the Nuggets stayed just close enough to take a game, to steal a game. They forced it to 7. And so, yeah, here we are with the Pacers really not having built up any kind of lead against the Thunder at any point. The largest lead they've ever had was 3 points in the early minutes of game 2. They didn't have a lead really at all in game 1, except at the very end when they had a 1-point lead to finish it out. Does this one feel more like the Nuggets series than the Wolves series?
Oh, 100%. I think you nailed it. Exactly how I feel, because I know that Nuggets series was 4-3, and it was a hard-fought series, but it did feel – it's so funny because I think if you talk to Nuggets fans and analysts, they might say the Nuggets felt like they blew a couple of games and that they should have won that series. But you also feel like the Thunder could have swept that series if you go back to games 1 and games 3 and how they, let go of the rope there at the end. You really felt like the Thunder did have control in most of the games in that series, and that's exactly how this has felt like. There has just been these small little runs or windows where the Pacers, especially at the end of game 1, took control. But again, throughout 2 games, I think the Thunder have clearly been the better team, even though it's 1-1. But that's got to translate to Indiana. Obviously, the Pacers are going to be much better at home with their crowd and not having, the OKC crowd behind the Thunder. But the defense is going to translate. We've seen it all playoffs long. We just got to hope for the Thunder that, the scoring from the role players, especially like we saw with Caruso and Wiggins, translates on the road. And if so, the Thunder are the better team. They should win this series, but they got to still at least win in Indiana.
Yeah, well, I think the danger, especially after the Pacers took game 1 in the way that they did, is now the Pacers have belief, right? They had nothing to lose coming into this series, and now they can believe they can actually hang with the Thunder and hang with the Thunder at home. And now all the Pacers have to do is protect their own home court, which to me is kind of a scary proposition that you've got this team that is, again, playing with house money, playing with nothing to lose, and all they have to do is protect home court.
Yeah, I agree because that's what's so big about, stealing home court. And you're right, because they were such big underdogs and because they were playing on the road, those first 2 games are kind of like house money. When nobody's expecting you to win and you're on the road, you do, I think, play a little bit looser, and you don't, especially when you go up 1-0, game 2 especially. But the Thunder, again, I just go back, 68 wins is not a fluke. Greatest point differential of all time is not a fluke. 29-1 versus the East is not a fluke. The Thunder are the better team. But it is tough to win on the road. It is tough to win on the road in Indiana and in the playoffs, but it has been done. Have the Pacers actually won a game 3 yet? It seems like they keep stealing games on the road and then losing game 3s. But this series does feel a lot like the Nuggets series. If the Thunder are going to take control and get home court back, you got to split in Indiana.
Well, let's dive into game 1 because statistically it was kind of a wild game. Most importantly, the Thunder forced 25 turnovers for the Pacers. I think he said 19 first-half turnovers, which is an insane number. The Thunder just committed 7 turnovers, and so it was a plus 18 for the Thunder in turnover differential. And I tested the limits of some of these AI research tools, ChatGPT, Grok, or whatever it's called on Twitter, asking it to do research on, has a team ever lost a turnover battle by 18 and won a playoff game? And I broke the AIs. I don't think it's ever happened. I think there was one, it took all this time to do all its analysis, and it came back and was like, based upon any statistics where a team has such a large turnover differential always winning, that it is highly unlikely that there's ever been a differential like this and the team on the losing end of that differential actually winning the game. I don't know if anybody ever did this research who actually has the time to go through game by game to find the numbers. But at this point, I'm going to say I don't think it's ever happened. So that statistic alone, 25-7 in the turnover battle, was a shocking differential that by all indications should mean the Thunder ran away with this one.
Yeah, and it felt like that watching it. And, it looks like they were running away with it. When they got up 15 with about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, it felt like the Thunder were finally, kind of making the gap big enough to where they didn't have to stress another Pacers come back and steal the game. And, of course, that ended up happening. I think the issue was they forced 25 turnovers. They just did not score on those turnovers like we're used to seeing the Thunder score. They score so many points in transition typically, and they are so good in transition. But in game 1, they forced those 25 turnovers, and I believe they only scored 11 points off those 25 turnovers. And that's a big reason why the Thunder didn't win, because they didn't shoot well from the field. They didn't shoot well, especially from inside the arc. I think outside the arc, they shot like 36.7%, I believe it was, which is pretty solid. That's decent. It's average. You'll live with that. But it was actually, at the rim, I believe they shot 43%. So if you're going to shoot like that from the field and you create 25 turnovers, you got to score more than 11 points off those 25 turnovers. And then, of course, the 3-point shooting from the Pacers, that combined with the lack of shooting from the Thunder is what ended up being the difference in the last few minutes of the game.
And all those things, I think, are why I said it's a little bit of an anomaly when you look at the stats, because you just point again at the turnover battle, and that would probably indicate the Thunder won the game. But if you look at all the other categories, you can see why the Thunder lost that game. They shot the ball very poorly. You mentioned the poor shooting at the rim, and overall they shot 39.8 from the field. Their three-point shooting was better than it had been, I think, in the playoffs, but still pretty average. They got out-rebounded 56-39. So people, I think, were coming into this game not believing that the Pacers were an elite rebounding team, but they kept the Thunder off the offensive boards, and they were gobbling up they gobbled up more offensive rebounds than the Thunder did. On the assist side, the Pacers had 24 assists. The Thunder, who are one of the better passing teams, only had 13 assists. You mentioned the points off of turnovers. The Thunder had just 11 points off of turnovers, despite the 25 turnovers they forced. Those things really didn't go right for the Thunder. And then on the other hand, the Pacers shot 46% from three. So those other statistical categories, you're like, well, I can see why the Thunder lost.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because besides the turnover battle, and besides the fact that the Thunder did lead all game long, the Pacers did outplay the Thunder in a lot of ways. And it didn't seem that way because the Thunder were up so big. And I think it was because of the turnover battle. The Thunder shot so many more shots than the Pacers do, which Mark Daignault said in pregame of game 2. That's what they're looking at. There's all the talk about losing the rebounding battle, but ultimately what it comes down to is they just want to have more field goal attempts than the other team. And they did that in game 1. But the shooting splits were so far in favor of the Pacers, it didn't play out like it typically would because the Thunder shot so below their averages. And, of course, the Pacers were on fire, especially from 3. But typically, if you shoot more shots than your opponent and you turn the ball over 25 times and only give it up 7 times, you're going to win. But, yeah, the Pacers basically outplayed them in every other facet, especially down the stretch. I think those stats got a little bit skewed in the last 3 minutes because the Thunder couldn't hit anything and the Pacers could not miss. We're talking about like Miles Turner banked threes off the glass, Andrew Nembhard step back, contested 3, really deep. Just kind of seemed like everything the Pacers were throwing up was going in, and the Thunder just could not hit in those last few minutes.
Yeah, that Miles Turner bank 3 was a gut punch. And if you're on the end of that being your team and that shot goes in, then you're thinking, yeah, it's our night, right? If you have a bank shot 3-pointer that's kind of like a heave like that and it goes in, it's your night.
Yeah, and it's demoralizing for the other team. Like, the Thunder crowd was so hype all game long. And you just felt the nervous energy as the Pacers were making their kind of like stereotypical comeback that they've been making all playoffs long. And then Miles Turner making that bank 3. You felt how demoralizing it was, like in the arena. And then just things like that lane violation. I know it's 1 point, but 1 point ended up being the difference in the game. And my biggest gripe with that is that you could pretty much call a lane violation on almost every single free throw. Like, watch free throws. There is pretty much a lane violation every single free throw. So to call a lane violation in the NBA Finals in crunch time in a close game was just wild to me. And then ironically, that 1 point they got from that ended up being the difference in the game.
Yeah, that was extremely frustrating. I want to dive into the defense, though. And coming into the series, and I think I even said it on the podcast, that the Pacers were an average defense in the regular season, and they've been an average defense in the playoffs. How much do you think that the Pacers' defense contributed to the Thunder's struggles both at the rim and kind of overall in developing any kind of offensive consistency, preventing the points in transition and the points off of turnovers? Or was the Thunder just having an off night?
I think it was a little of both. I think that the Pacers defense, although it was average throughout the regular season, I mean, this is the NBA Finals, so obviously, defense, somewhat you can control. You need the personnel, you need the defensive talent, you need the defensive tools and schemes. But, some of it, if your effort goes up, if your energy goes up, if your focus goes up on defense, it can get better. And I think that's happening with the Pacers because this is the NBA Finals. But then I think some of it, a lot of shots that the Thunder missed, you can look at Shea, Dub, Chet. They were either rushed or these are shots that we normally see them make and they just missed. And Mark Daignault talked about that when he was talking about, being able to control the things you can control because you can't really control makes or misses. It's a make or miss league. Steph Curry could get, 5 wide open threes and maybe he goes 0 for 5. I mean, that would be crazy, but it can happen. Or he can make all 5. And so, some of these looks are just misses that maybe they normally make. So they want to be able to control things like defense and effort and rebounding and taking the right shots. So the variables, the shooting variance doesn't control the fate of the game as much. But so I think it was a little bit of both. I think the Pacers defense has been a little bit better than advertised in the series so far. But I think in game 1 especially, the Thunder just also missed some shots they would normally make or rush some shots.
And then I want to talk about the Oklahoma City defense. Again, those turnovers is an indication that the defense was elite, was everywhere. Sort of the defense that you expect the Thunder to be with just their hands, arms, everywhere creating havoc. But at the same time, the Pacers had 18 corner threes that were pretty much almost always open. I think they converted 10 of them. And that has been somewhat of the Thunder defensive strategy. They collapse on the interior. They leave these shooters open on the kickouts, and they do their best to close out. And the Pacers were converting them at a high level. So do you think that's a risk in the way that the Thunder defend, that you've got such an elite three-point shooting team on the other end of the court, and especially those corner threes? The Pacers are lethal from those corner threes.
Yeah, I thought that was a storyline coming into the series, and definitely in game one it was. And I think that was part of the reason why the Thunder have chosen to go small. I say small. They're still starting Chet at the 5, so not small, but they're not starting double bigs, because you had to be more cautious about the Pacers shooting as a whole, because, their starting lineup, everybody can shoot. Miles Turner is their center. He can shoot. Siakam, he can shoot. So having another perimeter defender, so you can, stay closer to shooters, so you can close out quicker and you can rotate faster. I think that's been a part of the strategy, because the Thunder are very aware that the Pacers are a lethal three-point shooting team. And I think in game one, because the Thunder do typically concede corner threes and try to slow down and take out, a team's number one and number two option, you're going to leave some of those open. We saw that in game one, and the Pacers made the Thunder pay. I think in game two, they were a lot tighter on closeouts, on rotations. They were, not leaving those corner threes as open as they did in game one. I think in game one, they're like, if guys like Obi Toppin, want to beat us, go for it. But we didn't see that in game two. They were much tighter on those rotations. And because the Pacers don't have like a Jokic or an Anthony Edwards that can bend the defense, because, they can put up 30, 35 any given night, 40 any given night. Haliburton is a great player, obviously, but he's a playmaker first. Siakam is a great scorer, but he's not a 35-point guy. So they don't have to skew the defense as much to still be able to, kind of slow them down a little bit. They can kind of rely on the defensive talent, I think, to do that. So I think that was an adjustment in game two. And I think going forward, I think they will concede fewer corner threes against the Pacers than we've seen them do in the past.
Well, let's walk through the emotions, though, of the Pacers in that comeback. So, as you noted, the Thunder were leading by double digits throughout most of the game. Pacers might get it down to 8 or so points, but the Thunder always had an answer to kind of maintain that margin. And then in the fourth quarter, after building that 15-point lead, the Pacers just crept back into the game until they had an opportunity to take that game winner. But it was, I think, like a 9 or 8 point game with 4 or 5 minutes left, and then the Pacers just stopped missing the ball and everything went their way. But what was the energy like in the arena after Haliburton hit that game-winning shot?
Oh, like you could have heard a pin drop. Like, that place was so loud. The Paycom was so loud throughout the game, and the Thunder fans, brought the energy all night. And then when Haliburton hit that three, just silence, like disbelief. You could feel the energy in the arena. Yeah, there were 0.3 seconds left, but everybody knew what that shot meant. And it was just so deflating to be in that arena and to see, of course, I think like the only ones making noise were the Pacers themselves as they were celebrating. It was just disbelief.
And with that last play design with the 0.3 seconds left, did you have any thoughts on that? I mean, it's a very low success rate to try to convert a lob like that at the buzzer. But again, there's only 0.3 seconds left. What are your options?
Yeah, look, when there's 0.3 seconds left, there's not many options. Like, I see the vision, Chet with his 7'6" wingspan and ability to go up and catch a lob, the chances with 0.3 seconds. There was a game, I believe it was last year or the year before, where a team did that to the Thunder in the final seconds, won a game that way with like 0.3 or 0.4 seconds left in the game. So we've seen it done actually in Oklahoma City before. I think that's as good a shot as you're going to get with 0.3 seconds left. Like, the chances you're going to pass the ball in, get it to a shooter, and then be able to launch a contested shot with 0.3 seconds left. Like, take the lob, I guess. You're all the options are bad.
Yeah, I guess that's what kind of came down to. And then the last thing I want to mention about game one as we lead into game two is Chet Holmgren really struggled in this game. He had just 6 points. He was 2 of 9 shooting, just 1 block. I think J-Dub struggled a little bit as well. He ended up scoring 17, but he was just 6 of 19 shooting, 1 of 4 from 3. He did have 6 assists. Shea did put up 38 points, but he also struggled shooting from the field. He was 14 of 30. Really the only bright spot from a shooting perspective was Lou Dort, who was 5 of 9 from 3. And when Lou Dort was raining threes, I think that's when I was at my most optimistic about this game. But you did have some struggles from the Thunder's big three, primarily Chet. So going into game two, I think everybody wanted, expected, and was putting pressure on J-Dub and Chet to have a better performance because they really did key the Thunder's blowing out the Wolves in 5 games. And early in game two, it was like Chet and J-Dub were trying way too hard.
Yeah, I think that, after the game one narratives that, Chet and J-Dub, needed to score better and more for the Thunder to win this series and feeling like they needed to bounce back personally, I think that they were probably pressing a little bit to start game two. But I think they ended up both having really, really good games, really impactful games. Both scored in double digits. I think both were great defensively. Chet had a great first quarter. He scored 9 points. He was one big toe away from scoring 10 points and hitting 2 threes. I thought Chet was really, really good in the first quarter, and I thought that Dub, I thought he was great all game long. And I didn't have a big problem with Dub's game one. I just think that he missed some shots he normally makes, but he was still impactful. But I think certainly both of them bounced back in a big way in game two.
Yeah, although I think Dub still struggled a little bit shooting the ball. He was just 5 of 14 shooting. He's 1 of 5 from 3. He did hit that big wide open corner 3 early in the game, which set a good pace. But, I think Dub did contribute in game one in ways that weren't quite as visible with his shooting. He did have a lot of assists. He had 5 assists and 5 rebounds in game two as well. But yeah, Chet was very intentional that he was going to come out and play with more intensity, try to put points on the board. And especially in that first half, he really did a good job of that. And then in the second half, it was some other contributors that I think really stepped it up for the Thunder. Aaron Wiggins had a fantastic game too. Let's talk about Aaron Wiggins.
Yeah, Aaron Wiggins. It was so fun to see him play that well in the NBA Finals. And, for this international audience that maybe hasn't really watched OKC before, to be able to see the meme come to life in real time, the whole, maybe they've seen the Aaron Wiggins save basketball meme or heard that but didn't really know what it means. You got to see it firsthand on the biggest stage in the world. I thought it was awesome. He hit so many big threes. He was 5 of 8 from 3, 18 points. I thought he was great, as far as his activity. He chased down a bunch of loose balls and rebounds. I just thought he was so impactful, and the Thunder needed a guy off the bench, and obviously Caruso was that guy as well, but they needed somebody to come in and to play well and to score and to hit shots and to be kind of that release valve when the Pacers would double Shea, and I thought Wiggins was just so good. And they talked about it in the postgame. Dub talked about it. Shea, Mark, all of them talked about it. To be able to have the up and down minutes that Wiggins has had in the postseason, and then to come in game two of the finals and to play like that, really, really impressive.
100%. And I think one big difference in this game two versus game one really is the overall impact that the bench had relative to the impact that the Pacers bench had. And in the plus minus alone, you had Aaron Wiggins, who was a plus 24. You had Hartenstein, who scored just 3 points, but was a plus 17. Kenny Hustle played just 8 minutes, and he was a plus 15. The Thunder really did cruise in those bench minutes and the non-SGA minutes in this game.
Yeah, they really did. And that's, the Thunder's formula has been, Shea's going to get you 30 plus. The defense is going to be elite. And then, hopefully Chet and Dub are going to be those secondary scorers. And then you have 1 or 2 guys off the bench. And that is so key. and they got all those elements in game 2. Shea was incredibly efficient, 34 points. Dub and Chet were really good. But Caruso and Wiggins being able to kind of anchor those bench minutes and scoring 38 points combined from just those two guys. I mean, both of those guys, Caruso and Wiggins, each individually scored more than anybody on the Pacers scored. Like Haliburton scored 17 points. Caruso and Wiggins outscored Haliburton. Like that, pretty good chance you're going to win if Caruso and Wiggins were each outscoring the Pacers' top scorer.
Yeah, and I think the Pacers did a little bit different things in their lineup. Thomas Bryant, for one, got way more minutes in Game 2 versus Game 1. He played just 8 minutes in Game 1. He played 12 minutes in Game 2. It seemed like he was out on the court a lot more. Mathurin played 16 in Game 1. He played 22 in Game 2. What do you think the difference was for the Pacers with the way they were managing their bench minutes?
Yeah, I thought it was odd, honestly, that they went away a little bit from Game 1. I think, though, that because they believe in their depth so much, just like the Thunder do, they're not as predictable as most teams are going to be with their rotations. Like if the Thunder were playing the Knicks in the series, you would know exactly what the minutes distribution was going to be. It's pretty much going to be 48 minutes for 5 guys. I'm sorry, maybe McBride and Robinson off the bench will get a few minutes as well. But, with the Pacers, just like the Thunder, like there's probably Pacers fans saying like, where did this Aaron Wiggins guy come from? How come he's playing so many minutes, and how come he's scoring so many points against us? But if you go back to the Wolves series or the Nuggets series, where like Jay will play a lot, like the Pacers are a little bit like that. Like they trust their bench a lot, and Carlisle, tactician, he's maybe seen some things in the rotation or the lineup, things that he likes that certain guys provide in certain minutes. So I think they're just a little bit less predictable. So it might fluctuate minutes-wise from game to game as far as the Pacers rotation guys go.
Well, this game was very different on the turnover side of the ball. The Pacers had 15 turnovers. The Thunder had 14. So the Thunder were +1 in the turnover battle in this one as opposed to the +18 in Game 1. But somehow the Thunder ran away with this one. So, if you could give one reason why the Thunder were far more successful in Game 2 than they were in Game 1, what would that reason be?
They shot better. I mean, it sounds so simple and it sounds so silly, but if you look at the shooting splits, they just shot so much better, and they shot better than the Pacers did. Like if the Thunder are going to outshoot the Pacers, pretty good chance they're going to win, because at worst the turnover battle will be even, but more than likely the Thunder will win the turnover battle. So if the Thunder are going to shoot 49% from the field, and they're going to shoot 39% from 3 and 88% from the free throw line, there's a pretty good chance the Thunder are going to win, because the defense is going to be there. And the Pacers, despite Game 1, are not a really strong rebounding team. So the Pacers, in their wins, they're going to need to shoot better than the Thunder. So I just think that the Thunder across the board shot so much better than they did in Game 1.
Yeah, and statistically, all those statistical markers that we talked about in Game 1 that might indicate a Thunder loss flipped in Game 2. Again, shooting was much better. The Thunder shot 49% from the field, 39% from 3. That was a big one. They won the rebounding battle 43-35. They scored more points off of turnovers in Game 2 than they did in Game 1. So the things that the Thunder typically do in order to win, they did much better statistically in Game 2. The only difference was they didn't have the volume of turnovers. So really Game 2 was a much more Thunder game than Game 1 was, despite that huge turnover count, which I think everybody just thought the Thunder would run away with it early in that game with the number of turnovers they were forcing in Game 1. But this one was far more fun to watch than Game 1 as the Thunder maintained that lead. I think there was always that fear that the Thunder might catch fire and they would crawl back into this game. They never really did.
They never really did. They went on. So the Thunder got up 23 at one point, and the Pacers responded with a 10-0 run, got it back down to 13. And I think there was some nervousness, like, here we go again. This is what the Pacers do. But the Thunder immediately responded with a run themselves and got it back up to like 20 points. And then really the whole second half, the Thunder fully controlled this game, and there was really never any doubt. But I agree with you, just because the Pacers, what they've done all postseason and what they did in game one, it never felt like a safe lead. Like they would be up 22 points. And I think there was still some worry until it got to 0 seconds on the game clock. You felt like you couldn't be secure. But if you take away the fact that it's the Pacers and just look at this game, if this was any other team, you feel like, okay, Thunder had full control of this game. They dominated this game. It just didn't feel that way because you're always worried that the Pacers would go on some big run, but it never happened.
Yeah, and I thought this was a little bit surprising, but maybe you have some logic in this. So the Thunder had about a 19-point lead with 3 minutes to go, and then there's a foul on Mathurin. So he's got 3 free throws. He gets fouled on the 3. And so the Pacers have a chance to cut into that lead with some decent time left, about 2 minutes and 40 seconds left to go in the game. But that's when Carlisle chooses to empty his bench. Did that surprise you?
It did surprise me. After what we've seen this Pacers do all postseason long, that was very surprising. I think that everybody was surprised. And maybe it's because they felt like they already did the job of stealing one game in OKC, but you've got 2 games off. And it's not like, you're worried about a couple of extra minutes from the starters. I thought it was bizarre. I thought that for sure we would see them, give it a push there in those last few minutes and give it a try. So yeah, I was surprised. And I talked to a few other media members, and they were all surprised. We were all surprised when they waved the white flag, just because of what we've seen them do.
Yeah, but I, for one, breathed a huge sigh of relief when that happened because, again, we've seen what the Pacers can do late in games to make extraordinary comebacks, and I guess this one wasn't to be. Any other comments about Game 2 you want to make?
No, I think that just the fact that the Thunder won in pretty convincing fashion, I think that, now we have ourselves a series. It was a must-win game for the Thunder, which is funny because, again, such huge favorites coming into this. But if you lose Game 2, you're in the worst spot you can be in the NBA Finals because you were the home team. And you go to Indiana down 0-2, and then all of a sudden both those games in Indiana become most wins. So now it's a best-of-5 series. You got to split one in Indiana.
Yeah, and that's how we'll close with some analysis into these games in Indiana. The next 2 are at home for the Pacers. The Thunder absolutely cannot lose both of those games because they would fall behind 3-1. Give us your thoughts and predictions over how Game 3 and Game 4 will play out.
I think the popular pick that I've seen so far, and I understand it, is that the Pacers win Game 3. It's the first game at home. They're coming off a loss. And that the Thunder still Game 4, and it goes back to OKC 2-2. I'm funny in that I'm like, well, that's exactly how the Nuggets series played out. So what are the chances that we're going to see the exact same scenario? Because now it feels like everybody's kind of picking like, okay, Thunder lose Game 1, win Game 2, lose Game 3, win Game 4, win Game 5, lose Game 6, win Game 7. I just don't think it plays out exactly like the Nuggets series does. What are the chances? I think the Thunder are the better team. I think that they actually steal Game 3. That's my prediction. I expect a very close, very tight Game 3, but I just think the Thunder pull it out.
What do you think the odds are that the Thunder could actually win both in Indiana?
I mean, I think there's a shot. It's tough. The Pacers have a great home court advantage, and this is a team that any given night they can get hot, and obviously the Thunder role players typically won't shoot as well on the road. So it's going to be hard to win both of those games in Indiana. But I sound like a broken record, but the Thunder are clearly the better team. So wouldn't it be shocking if the Thunder pulled it off, if they won both of those games in Indiana, just because of the better team? But, if I had to say, I'd say that they split in Indiana would be my guess.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the Thunder can put together the best ingredients of Game 1 along with the best ingredients in Game 2 and just take the Pacers behind the woodshed and whip up on them, because if they can force the turnovers at the rate they did in Game 1 and shoot like they did in Game 2, it's going to be one of those 30, 40-point blowouts, which in Game 2, it looked like that could happen, but the Pacers always seem to have an answer to keep it sort of within striking distance, so credit to the Pacers. But certainly a lot to watch for in games 3 and 4. And I hope the Thunder can pull out game 3 because it is not a fun place to be with your team trailing 2-1.
No, not fun at all, because all of a sudden that game 4 is incredibly important. And if you're a fan of a team down 1-2 on the road, incredibly stressful, because you do not want to go down 3-1. Yes, teams have come back down 3-1. We know that, but man, that is not a place you want to be down 2-1 going into a game 4. The Thunder pulled it off in Denver, but remember how stressful that game 4 was and how tight that game 4 was. I believe that was a game where Cason Wallace was great and helped the Thunder win that game. But yeah, you don't want to put yourself in that scenario again. Go out and win game 3. Game 4 is a lot less stressful that way.
Well, as we noted in the cold open, Brandon's going to hit the road and be in Indianapolis for games 3 and 4. So next time you tune into the podcast, we'll have a firsthand account of that home court advantage. And that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, host of the podcast, and he's Brandon Rahbar, Daily Thunder beat writer. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to the Daily Thunder podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future finals episodes. And if you like what you hear, do us a favor and leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll be back in your feed soon.